Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. It's super windy. I just hope the episode is going to be audible. Okay. Rapture is a silent observational entrance into divine remembrance. Now, what the idea of rapture means, and excuse the coughs, guys. If people are wondering why, there's coughs, air pollution is out of control, guys. We got to do something to save them. Definitely the reason for my coughs is air pollution, but I want to read for the viewers the definition of rapture, and then I'm going to give my take on the idea. So, rapture is a noun, a feeling of intense pleasure or joy, expressions of intense pleasure or enthusiasm about something. The rapture, according to some millenarian teaching, the transporting of believers to heaven at the second coming of Christ. Okay, so there's the Christian definition of it. I guess the pre-apocalypse psychology. And as a verb, usually be raptured. Here it says, I'm just reading the dictionary, it says transport a believer from earth to heaven at the second coming of Christ. So, of course, I'm not I guess in this episode, I want to share, a transcendental approach I have to rapture. But I guess I'll separate my view from the religious view, and maybe people see parallels to them, or maybe not. So the idea, from the Christian context, religious context, there's a sort of similarity. The idea of going from earth to heaven, right? Alright, guys, I'm just fixing the song. I think this is going to be an appropriate song. Alright. So, rapture. I am right now. How would I say it? It's like being in a silly state of mind, and suddenly it gets serious, and then suddenly it's silly, and then serious, and we realize the world's changing. If we were to categorize rapture as a sort of experience, as a type of state of mind, or something that happens to the state of mind, there has been moments where I have experienced, I wouldn't say pleasure, but a sort of, I'll say this. this way. There's been moments where I feel I've been privileged, and I feel many are, but in this lifetime, because I have my own memories to work with. There has been moments where I have found myself alone, but not alone in society, but alone with the universe and my own mind. And there's been moments where in those instances, it's like for some people feel transcendence is like going from one dimension to another. But imagine transcendence was a door, and for a limited time, or just for a moment, or a person could just open the door and glimpse through it. You know, when I'm speaking about the concept of rapture, I am, in some sense, the intent I had before this episode was, I'll get the idea just out there. Pretty much, I feel a state of rapture when a person sees something so incredibly fascinating that their brain doesn't have familiar patterns, right? So the brain has to create new patterns, let's say. It's like imagine all human beings have an original nature, just for the sake of speech, let's say. They have an original state. And imagine we have deviated from this original state of knowing for so long that suddenly when something happens in reality that reminds us of, let's say, so considered original state, then that's how I'm defining the concept of rapture. Okay, it's in some sense a peek into the harmony of greater dimensions and lesser ones. Maybe that's a way of saying it. I've had moments where, I mean, I'll share this. There's been times where, you know, I've listened to these, like, what is it called? America's Got Talent auditions on YouTube. And there's been times where I've just heard someone sing, and for a moment it was as if I forgot all my opinions on the moment, and it was just a pure feeling. It was like an emotion that the moment provides, that it doesn't need a comparative analysis with any other moment. Okay? It's kind of like, imagine if we were timeless beings and deep down, or we were rooted in a timeless dimension, and suddenly, right, something happened in life where there was somebody was playing the right note, the planets had aligned at the right time, and it was just like this perfect moment where the person literally doesn't even feel like a body, right? There's moments I've experienced, and it's kind of hard to categorize the mind when it's really a dynamic state, right? But I gotta say something for this episode. I'm trying to just, you know, honestly, this episode is me trying to explain an emotion. Like, imagine an emotion that can't really be identified, can't be given a term. But I've had moments in this lifetime, moments where I think of the brain, somebody had said it, that the brain is like an organ that generates personality. Now imagine the brain being like an instrument, and imagine the brain, or some sort of, let's say, René Descartes' mind-body dualism, where the brain can hear its own, let's say the brain is an instrument, the brain plays a melody, which is the experience of the personality, and then imagine the brain could hear its own music, right? And sometimes I would say, I mean, aside from synchronistic moments, there's been moments of pleasure. I can't even call it pleasure, I would call it serenity, right? In Mahayana Buddhism, if somebody was like, yo, what's the concept of pure lands in Mahayana Buddhism? In Mahayana Buddhism, the idea of pure lands was this heavenly abode. And you know what's hilarious? It's kind of like the idea of the advanced civilization, but before there was a fixed concept of civilization. Imagine a Buddhist that wants to, reincarnate in the pure lands, a realm of clarity, where the light in our eyes doesn't deceive us, but liberates us. You know, it's remarkable when I think about my life and how many different states of mind and reality my attention has piloted through. Even me right now trying to remember moments where there was a divine significance. I'll say it this way, that let's pose this question of saying, how can the human intelligence notice something beyond itself? Let's say right now I'm existing in this moment, I'm a known entity in this moment, and if I wanted to get a sense of, is there anything else happening in this moment aside from my mind and intelligence, right? Aside from just let's say the inner space of my mind. Okay, so there's no complaints in the chat section. I guess it's not that windy. I've experienced moments where there is a self in the moment. There's a desire. What desire is really something the free will wants to do. What the free will wants to do is the expectation it has from its past and memory. I've had moments that were so synchronistic and so unique that I guess they were a sort of rapture, something caused the attention to notice the unknown moving. So the thing I was saying earlier about trying to, a person is present in the moment, wants to see what else is moving, it's kind of like if we take ourself out of the equation, it's as if the free will for one moment doesn't have to project an idea, and when it observes reality instantly, you know what it is? It's like to have a personality. Imagine like a circle, and it's like a degrees in the circle. But a moment of rapture is like the center of the circle. It's where you're not defined by just one way your brain presented itself, but the presence of the moment holds something within it, that the moment a person realizes the beyond is present, right? That's when supernatural feelings arise, poetically. Divinity is something that, you know what it is? It's like a puppet wondering what are the strings that are moving it, right? And the puppet believes that it is moving itself. But if the puppet for one moment doesn't identify with its movement and with its own ownership of the moment, it will recognize that there is a stillness that is not attached to the body. If a person is, I don't know, people are different, but there's been moments where I have just realized I am the space. My intelligence is the space where form is moving, right? It's kind of like, being a rock in a river and suddenly shifting perspectives, and now you're the river, right? It's kind of like a realization that you're part of something that is is a suggestion of another reality, right? Like what happens when a musician goes on stage, hits some notes, sings in such a way that the audience cries. It's as if, why does the audience cry? Because the experience is so new, because the brain has so many expectations of things that cannot happen, that when they happen, it's as if what follows the goosebumps is like tears of another world, right? There's a quote I've shared in the description. Oh my God. It's a quote by this dude called Lord Byron. He says, "There is pleasure in the pathless woods, there is rapture in the lonely shore, there is society where none intrudes, by the deep sea and music in its roar. I love not man the less, but nature more." It's kind of like, because we are living at that, let's say, phase in history where we don't really know what consciousness is, or how it's actually, what the mystery behind it is, because we're living in we're a known entity in an unknown world, and there's so many mysteries. It's kind of like we're living as beings that know that there is a secret, but we don't understand that secret, right? And I think what rapture is like getting it's like the mind is experiencing a moment where poetically a secret of your heart is being revealed, or something close to that. There's this picture by from Hermes. I think this is like the best picture that could depict the idea of excuse me guys, the idea of rapture. And I think it's a Rembrandt painting. I don't know. Actually, I don't know who drew it, but it's a depiction of Hermes. And Hermes is, poetically like an archangel of wisdom, or this higher dimensional being where it's like the hidden personality to the logos. In certain traditions, especially in religion, the inner voice is depicted as something blasphemous, right? But in previous traditions before Christianity, the inner voice, the logos, it was as if it was like a person suddenly knowing something out of nowhere. It was poetically like visited by Hermes. Think of it, But anyways, here I'll show the picture to the viewers. I think this is one of the most profound paintings I've ever seen. But I think it definitely explains like the idea of something that causes the individual to forget who they are, and in some sense be absorbed in the presence of the moment. Like when a musician sings on stage, the audience gets captured. by that moment. It's as if everybody is waiting to see what sound comes from the musician next, right? And it's as if for a moment people forget who they are and they experience something else that is present and occurring in their moment. Like if people look at this picture, the first question to ask is like, where did this dude get his hat from? But the other thing is, it's as if like the presence of Hermes is access to another reality. I mean, think of it this way. The concept of angels, or the concept of divine messengers, or even the concept of prophets, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas, right? It's as if there's a concept of, there's the idea of the portal. Somebody goes into a portal and goes to a higher dimension. But now, when a higher dimensional entity, right, let's say a more advanced, intelligent being comes down to lesser, let's say a greater dimensional entity comes down to lesser dimensions, it's as if it's emanating the greater dimensions. It's like a higher dimensional being coming into a lower world. It's like for all the lower dimensional beings, it's like they're seeing a higher dimensional entity, right? They're seeing a higher dimension. They're seeing something from another dimension, right? It's the same for like cultures, right? So, you know, if someone's, let's say, from a culture in the East goes into, you know, Western culture, it's as if like they are carrying with themselves a hidden way where reality exists, right? I think that's an incredible way to define the mind, actually. What is the mind? A hidden way reality is held, a way that we can access. You know, it's as hidden as we speak it, right? And whoever's listening, feel free to, if anybody has, you know, experiences of rapture, any views on it, feel free to share it in the comment section. The mind is such an incredible mystery, you know? It's like existence for a philosopher is really mysterious. You know? Imagine a being that was conscious that it didn't exist as a form. So we have this idea that beings are just creatures with form, creatures with shape, and their shape separates them from the world, and that's why they can be seen, you know, as a separate being. But imagine before an entity, a shaped entity, like imagine before we were, like anybody, imagine everybody, before they were their body, before they were born, imagine they were a space of the moment. They were just like the moment. It's like imagine your soul had entered space before entering a shape in the space. And so when the shape in the space realizes something about the nature of the space, in some sense it's like a divine remembrance of what else it is. You know, guys, I feel this might be a short episode. I'm kind of seated in a way where the wind's hitting my face from every angle. You know, even I don't know. There's moments in this life where before there's any logical sense or reason, it's like to comprehend the reason for something is like an effort. It's like an effort of the brain. And there's moments where before there's, it's the effort of the free will. And before there's an effort for the free will to move, it's as if the person is in the presence of a universe. It's like, maybe I could say it this way, that extremely grateful people, every moment is a sort of rapture for them, you know. Rapture is like the aftermath of a divine moment, you know, a moment where something is being recognized to be possible, which previously the brain thought it was impossible, you know. Like, what brings like intense joy? If we were to wonder about the most supreme level of joy, like the ultimate level of joy, the ultimate level of joy would be joy based on something new. Rapture is like a way of experiencing novelty, I would say. If the person was familiar, they would know, they would look like, just like this picture here, like all those people in this picture. It's like these people didn't need to behave this way, but there was something new, something in the presence of the moment, that it was as if they forgot who they were, and it's like moths. Imagine like a bunch of moths in a room, and suddenly somebody turns the light on, and all the moths are like, what the fuck? Like, they're freaking out, you know, going towards the light. For them, that light, imagine just like Hermes is, you know, standing here and all these people are like behaving this way, right? So imagine it's just like a light turning on in a dark room, and all the moths, you know, around the candle flame and whatnot. You know, I just realized I don't think anybody's made, you know, a candle that's kind of like a light bulb, but it's a candle inside. A light candle, you know. A candle bulb, I don't know what to call it. If I was to ask, you know, let's say an evil person gets pleasure from doing something evil, and a good person gets pleasure from doing something good, could there be a sort of rapture for an evil person, you know? I mean, really what religions say, I mean, what the concept of heaven and hell is, it's like, you know, beings being teleported. You know, that's kind of something I hadn't noticed about religion, that the idea is after death, there's an entrance. You know, that's the crazy thing. We think death is an exit. But what if it's an entrance, you know? I mean, the Pharaoh definitely thought it was like an entrance, you know? The Pharaoh was known to, like, want to take his whole ship and everything, his kingdom, to the afterlife. Like, he was, you know, looking at it. The Pharaoh was looking at his henchmen, and it's like, yo, polish my boat. I'm gonna die. It's kind of messed up, but anyways. I don't know, guys. I think I'm, the rapture I've experienced, it's just moments where the unknown is moving. You know? Can you imagine if I end the episode right now? I don't know what to say. I know that through silence, a person that experiences silence will begin to observe the nature of how their mind moves. Just like we don't freak out, like right now our heart is beating and the human being doesn't go like, oh my god, supernatural event, nobody's thinking, it's like the brain's not thinking about the heart to move, but it's moving, right? There's a sort of automation to it, and I feel what rapture is how in the inner realms the person is actually experiencing a completely different location of reality. I guess, a good phrase to say is like rapture is the teleportation of the mind into an original state where it cannot lose. And somebody might be like, Mr. Within, you're looking too deeply, too much into the idea of rapture. I have this bench on my balcony. And when I sit on it, I feel rapture. Oh man. Guys, I gotta be honest, I'm coughing so much due to my bad smoking habit that I feel like another break is coming soon. What is life? It's an energetic movement. We are being energy. The moment is directed through attention, just like our body is like a separate part of it's like a separate part of nature. It's like our body is the earth, a part of the earth that is separated from the earth. And when I think about the nature of attention moving, like how my free will is moving right now, it feels like another separation. So in the outer realms, we notice like the nature of the world, and we're like, okay, like our body is part of the physical universe or physical realm. And so I would say our free will is like in a similar relationship. It's like our body is a part of our outer world. Our free will is a part of our inner world. The nature of our attention. To truly wonder what kind of being we are. And I could right now choose to be content. I could just act. A person can, choose to love their ignorance. They can choose to be defined by their ignorance. Our attention presents reality through different forms. Our memories are identifications with parts of a changing world, with instances of a changing world. We as a human being experience so many self-simulations that not all of them are in our consciousness. And so, what is really going on in the subconscious? What is the true complexity of the brain? Perhaps in stillness, one will meet their soul like an invisible friend. If consciousness is conditional to form, one has to wonder, before a form was seen, like this is a bizarre concept, it's like before the child opened its eyes or could acknowledge something consciously, it's like children are not individuals. It's like the body is individual, but the mind is not behaving it like an individual. It is spoken to, conditioned, and then the individuality comes. It's like this. It's like there's a difficulty between saying like Tarzan, who was raised with animals, right? It's as if he had a sense of individualism, or it was as if this is really a huge mystery. I shouldn't say huge mystery, but sometimes I think like when the bird flies in the sky, does the bird feel separate to the sky, or does it feel like it's being the sky in that moment? Rapture is a pointer to an emotional state. What an emotional state is the change of the intellect. When a person's mind changes, it's like an emotion. There's a sort of emotional conviction behind it. Beyond this idea of rapture, the presence of the moment initiates many simulations. And due to the free will being introduced in a singular fashion. All that the human mind can do is wait for the new. In a changing world, every moment that changes, it's like novelty. It's like an actor in a film wondering what the purpose of the film is. And imagine there's a main scene where the actor's life is like the purpose of the film. The musician goes on the stage and everybody is silent watching the musician. For that musician, the moment and how the moment moves is its soul. A person is left with their experiences, Just like a person learns different words, they learn a language. The language is an ability to move conceptually, to move as an idea, to communicate as an entity. And so, if we saw existence as a language, it's like the person's experience of life and all the various moments their mind has accumulated. It's like the bee seeks the nectar of the flower, right? And it goes to different flowers. So similarly, the brain is kind of like looking for the nectar of existence, and it's using various experiences. And so we have, let's say, a dictionary for a language, right? Now our memories and experiences and any sort of archetypal, our experiences are like the dictionary of life. Based on our experiences, we have an ability to communicate. Life is like every moment you experience is like a new word in a dictionary. And they're all accessible. Like how strange is our minds that right now I could remember an instant of yesterday. Even though I'm in the present, our minds are acting like time machines when it comes to the past. The mind has a sort of going back into the past like nature. Look, I think this is really profound. That when we remember our past, we're like a future self going back into the past, right? Like sometimes I wonder if in the future, like let's say 1,000 years, couple thousand years from now, there's like an very advanced humanity, and sometimes I think, would they even need time travel to go to the past? Imagine we realize that all human experiences ever, like all the human beings that have lived on this planet, that have come and gone, Imagine somehow we realize through some technology or some energetic revelation or something that every person's experiences is accessible. Imagine there's a way a person can sit down, let's say you sit still and silent, and it's like your mind is in the river of the memories of a species, of all creatures in there. A part of me feels that because the moment is unknown, knowledge will never feel absolute. Because we're in a changing world, our knowledge will not feel absolute. But the only thing that I would say has been unchanging, when I look at my life, my body has changed, my personality has changed based on the experiences. The only thing that seems to have not changed is how I am aware, that awareness which is accessing the present and can access the memories at the same time. See, this is the bizarre nature of mind. If we were to remember yesterday, let's say somebody ate an apple yesterday, right? If they remembered yesterday, and if we had the idea that the person is a thought, if the person remembered yesterday, they had to become that person who they were yesterday. It's like literally, it's as if a singular personality, but the nature of the mind is not singular like that. We can see what's happening today, right? Like right now I'm aware of the present, but at the same time I'm also remembering yesterday where I went to my fridge and got an apple. So you see the nature of the mind, or let's say the more profounder mystery of the human existence, is that we sure biologically exist, and our biological system existence is keeping the present. Literally what existence means is being present, right? But when we can access a memory of yesterday where we were present and still be able to discriminate that yes, we are not that memory that we were yesterday, right? So what I'm trying to say is that the nature of the inner realms, that your mind has an ability for the free will to look through the eyes of the present, but simultaneously has an ability to notice the past, and could simultaneously have an ability to use the past and the present to project strategies for the future. We are, even though we say we're physical creatures, but at the same time, we have a non-physical access to how the intelligence moving the creature happens. You see, dear viewers, our minds have not been taught to us. You see, this is something very strange, but when you look at a deer, like a gazelle, like giving birth or something, right? That, or let's say a deer gives birth, that deer knows how to walk already. It's like bizarre if you watch the video. The baby deer is born and it already knows how to walk, right? It just needs to move a little, right? And of course, evolutionary biologists could be like, okay, deers are fragile creatures, right? So they have to, evolutionary speaking, they have to be prepared to run at any moment, right? So it would make sense that genetically the deer is born already knowing how to run, how to walk, so ingrained to its survival, right? But when we look at the human being is born, but it has to be taught how to speak. It has to be taught how to walk. It's like the animal instincts of children, just the way they're designed. They're designed to crawl through life. Like, isn't it remarkable? Every person right now hearing me, right? We've all crawled, like all children crawl or roll, And then we have to teach the human being how to use its intelligence. But in nature, the creatures that are born in nature, they already know how to be their intelligence, right? Their intelligence is innate. So it's kind of like we have to voluntarily activate human intelligence, because at some point our species deviated from the ecosystem. We created our own ecosystem, and then we had to indoctrinate everybody into the new world we had created in the unnatural world we had created in nature, right? So right now, the type of mind that current civilization or human civilization is preparing is an unnatural mind, or an unnatural approach to the mind, where you have to learn the use of the mind. But if we go back to this view that the baby deer already knows how to run, right? What if we don't understand what the mind is, but we already know how to use it? You see, there's the conditioning element, the conditioned element, but then there's the unconditional element to the moment, right? Like, people don't have to be taught how to breathe. Do you know? They don't have to be taught, how to open their eyes, and they don't have to be taught like how their heart should beat. Right? Those are things that are so naturally already happening in an automated way that we just instantly identify as it being us. Right now, when I look at my biological body and I ask myself, who owns this body? I think about the idea of my free will, right? The persona, which the free will is like how your unknown attention steps into an ideological or archetypal Iron Man suit. So what if, I'll go back to this again, the baby deer knows how to run, and what if the human mind knows already how to happen? And what if the greatest secret to human intelligence is how we intentionally forgot what we are? You know, it's like we created a simulation in another dimension, and then we forgot we were natural in the previous, we forgot truth in the previous dimensions. I guess one thing I could say is the way our memories work, how a person can remember, perhaps it's happening with the same naturalism that the baby deer knows how to run already. The question comes, how many ways of being in the moment are there that we already know how to maneuver in? It's in some sense, let's create a classification for states of mind, and let's say there's unnatural states of mind and there's natural states of mind. Natural states of mind don't need anything additional, right? For example, the psychedelic experience, the person requires a trigger to become aware of, let's say, a sort of perception-based transcendental reality. There's natural states of mind, unnatural states of mind. How many? It's like, what do we know? Or what could we know? Or what do we know that we don't know that we know? And I feel rapture is a clue. It's like rapture is that moment where poetically a known simulated self discovers a true reality, an unknown truth. It's the mysteries and the behaviors of the world. It's not just creatures that behave in the world. The world has a behavior of its own, but we don't ascribe personality. In certain religious traditions, they ascribed personalities to the world. They even ascribed personality to certain states of mind. For example, I don't know which book it was I read this, but I was looking into Vedanta and Vedic thought, and just in the mystical dimensions of Indian culture, and there was this concept of Kali, Okay, and I don't want to explain what kind of deity Kali is, but I just want to say that it was this idea that when a person had greed, or they had some sort of selfish desire, it didn't matter if there were 10 people in the room, anytime the person had that state, they would add Kali would be present. It was as if Kali was this interdimensional being living in the greedy state of mind of any entity that presented itself. Right now we are so convinced that it's just physical human beings are the most advanced intelligence here, that we don't even wonder what else there could be, right? And the species has a fear of anything that's different than it. That means sometimes, like, we're living on a planet right now that there's still racism, right? What does that mean? That means it's like a person seeing something different than them and having hostility towards it. It's like if the species is still having civil war, an internal civil war, it's as if we are not ready for, like, poetically, or futuristically, like aliens coming down or other interdimensional beings coming or something else, right? We are so self-centered as an entity, and this is of course due to the biological survival, right? To me, it's kind of like, I always thought about it. Why is it that if somebody desires to, like, let's say somebody desires to have, like, intense sex, right? It's as if, like, from the religious angle, or sex with someone who they're not married to, from the religious angle, it's like bad desire. But why is it that someone desiring to drink a glass of water, like, there's no punishment, there's no sense of, like, sin, right? Why is it that one desire is okay and another desire is not, right? And I feel this is the nature of the mind in adopting a strategy of placing its own value in accordance to other values. Okay. Somebody in the chat section is like, sorry, listening to your previous talk, be right back. I'm like, man, my past self is more exciting than my present self, it seems. Anyways, guys, think of the approach I'm taking. It's like an eagle. The eagle's on the branch, access to limited reality. The eagle identifies as the sky, goes into the sky, sees the whole forest at once, and then can zoom in. Really, what I think I'm doing in these talks is through a sort of speaking through verse. I am zooming in and out of what the moment, what the constitution of the moment can be. What I'm trying to say here in regards to Rapture being a sort of silent observational entrance, moments where I've felt I've come close to experience some sort of emotional rapture, or some intensity of emotions, as if, like, the emotion visited me, as if somebody's like, I saw an angel right last night, right? And imagine somebody seeing and having an emotion which is equivalent to, like, an angel appearing in the room out of nowhere, right? So it's like the intensity of that emotion. What I've realized is that when I, just personally as who I am, when an emotion becomes too intense, if the emotion is being received through fear, I lose my composure sometimes. That means that the emotion possesses me beyond the ability of the free will to look slowly at things through the intellect. Silence, by many mystics and many mystical traditions, silence and stillness were resembled or were like portals to divinity. That means, in some sense, if you ask the ancient yogis, what is samsara made of? They would say noise and movement. The poet Rumi says, silence is the language of God, all else is poor translation. Similarly, to draw parallels to that quote, there's this incredible story from this very enlightened sage, the great sage of Arunachala, Sri Ramana Maharshi. And Sri Ramana Maharshi is like this, I can't explain who he is, but he's like an incredible being. If there were, like, let's say we have like the seven wonders, like the pyramids, and whatnot, the pyramids of Egypt, just like there's architectural wonders. I would say Ramana Maharshi would be one of the wonders of how a human psychology occurred. He's an incredible human being. So anyways, he has this story. And by the way, he's this man he sat so long in samadhi that the dude needs a cane to actually walk. So Sri Ramana Maharshi, this enlightened figure, usually he's escorted by disciples and whatnot, but one day it's a sunny day and he chooses to walk to the nearby town alone. And this story is being shared by his disciple Papaji. That's how I heard this story. So Sri Ramana Maharshi, this enlightened being, he chooses to go to the next town, and as he's walking, he sees that there's a tree that doesn't have any leaves, and he sees like this dry tree. And out of all the trees in the forest, right, he decides to just lie down, put his back on the tree, and just take a nap. And the story is so profound because when he opens his eyes, he's like, imagine you put your back against a tree, and so when you open your eyes, what do you see? You see the top branches of the tree. And so Ramana Maharshi, he opens his eyes, he sees the tree has blossomed. The tree that was dead has blossomed. And in front of him is a bunch of figures. These seven figures, seven random strangers have appeared in front of him. And Sri Ramana Maharshi, he stands up, and all the gods, all those people introduce themselves as the gods of the lokas, the seven lokas. So pretty much, think of it this way: the representatives, the avatars of the seven heavens came to meet him. And as if the avatars had entered the body of people who were nearby or something, I don't know. But the story goes that Sri Ramana Maharshi, suddenly there's these seven, avatars in front of him of the lokas, and pretty much the gods have come to see him. And so the gods say to Sri Ramana Maharshi, they say that earth is so noisy, because Sri Ramana Maharshi was considered by some people the incarnation of silence. That's the title he was given to him. For example, Rishi Vyasa, somebody who my eternal eyes are politically previously fond of, and I've looked through, I find he was given the title as the incarnation of God in language. Ramana Maharshi was like the incarnation of God in silence, that sort of idea. And the gods tell him that the earth is so loud and so noisy, and as if the gods are saying the inner realms of people are in such turbulence, that the gods say to Shri Maharshi, we have not seen a human being as silent as you, as detached as you. And that's pretty much the story, that the heavens came to meet Ramana Maharshi. This man who had understood, his main teaching was like, be silent and the wisdom will follow. Find an authentic preferencelessness. I'm telling you, anybody who finds that moment, it's a moment that activates. Poetically, it activates a hidden destiny, I think. When there's a moment when we are nobody, it's as if the mind has the freedom to be anybody. And if still there is no desire to be anybody after the realization of the freedom of the mind to project in, let's say, infinite ways, it's like another way of saying when a being can renounce infinity, they have already transcended the world. But the human species, in regards to our physical experience, infinity is still, a chapter of history that has to be written. Anyways, I'm going to, put the cherry on the cake and pretty much read a bunch of Rapture quotes about Rapture. And then I'll end the talk. Pretty much what I wanted to say, I've said. My personal experience of Rapture is moments where I have watched the unknown move first. In order to watch the unknown move first, it's a way of saying the mind has no reason to move first. Sometimes on this planet we may feel that states of hopelessness or states of impossibility or states of inability are states that we should, be sad about or get upset about. But in reality, if the human intelligence can find a moment where it doesn't have to be anything, that's when reality feels it is being seen. Right? It's as if the greater dimensions have always been here. Right? It's just like the creature was walking on, was a four-limbed creature at some point, right? It realized it could have always moved on two legs. Or even a better example would be imagine the potential of the human mind like the wings of a bird, but the bird doesn't know. The bird hasn't used its wings yet. So imagine a bird that hasn't flown yet and it's just walking and it's wondering, why it can't use it's like what? Imagine a bird, let's say we personify a bird and the bird's doesn't know what flight is, and the bird's like, why do I have these strange hands? Imagine a squirrel and a bird are friends. I'll just create a story here, A squirrel and this bird are friends. and the squirrel jumps and runs really quickly, right? And the bird is trying to follow the squirrel, but the bird is always behind. It can't, it can't run as fast as the squirrel. It can't, let's say, move that fast. And this bird doesn't know its wings, right? Doesn't know it can use its wings. And one day, because they're friends, the squirrel just waits and waits for the bird to catch up, and then they're walking, slowly. And the squirrel says, have you ever thought that your wings are not made for, let's say, to, touch the branches or whatever? And it's as if for the bird that's just walking, it feels deep down as if there is a greater purpose for it, right? Just like the bird can always fly, but it doesn't know how. It's like we have human minds, but we don't know the most advanced state it's going to be. And I think this is the best metaphor I have found, for the mind, for the human being's use of the mind. Our minds to fly in greater dimensions and greater skies. But I feel that's the case. And the human species is waking up, just like an inventor could invent something that had never been invented before but could have always been invented. Similarly, there's going to be ways that human beings are going to be living and experiencing life that the future generations are going to make us feel, foolish for not realizing how advanced we were, right? It's like I don't know how to say it, but it's there is a hidden purpose to our minds. Maybe in this century it's not going to be revealed, but I think in the future, when the era of collective mindhood enters, we are actually not a creature of matter, but a creature of space. We are the space in the creature. That's what consciousness is. Okay, so into the quote tunnel. So I'm going to just read quotes about Rapture. Helen Keller. Once I knew only darkness and stillness. My life was without past or future. But a little word from the fingers of another fell into my hand that clutched at emptiness, and my heart leaped to the rapture of living. It's strange, guys. We don't know who Helen Keller's teacher was, but that teacher was a genius. Let me look this up, actually. That means the level of compassion you need to have to introduce a world to someone who is in that world but doesn't have access to it. Okay, there we go. Anne Sullivan. Anne Sullivan was Helen Keller's teacher. That means imagine that the level of compassion you need to have. Literally, Anne Sullivan, the way she helped Helen Keller is the same as angels, helping human beings on earth from a religious context. I would say Anne Sullivan is an example of, literally a human being that actually did what an angel, the archetype of the angel, can. Anyways, Nostradamus, the inflated imitations of gold and silver, which after the rapture are thrown into the fire, all is exhausted and dissipated by the depth. All scripts and bonds are wiped out. At the fourth pillar dedicated to Saturn, split by earthquake and flood, vexing everyone, an urn of gold is found and then restored. Sorry guys, anyone wearing headphones, I apologize if the coughs are subtle. But anyways, I have no idea how to interpret this Nostradamus quote, but I think Nostradamus was known as this French future teller. And this is like one of his predictions, I think, at the fourth pillar dedicated to Saturn, split by earthquake and flood, vexing everyone, an urn of gold is found and then restored. It's I don't know how to interpret what he's saying here, but it's kind of like, imagine there's an apocalypse and suddenly inside our planet there's a sun. An urn of gold is found and then restored. It's like a hidden sun in the earth, and then when the earth goes through an apocalyptic event, that sun is realized. Can you imagine? We're like, no way, that's why the center of the earth is so hot. There's a sun inside. That means it's not just sunny outside of Earth, it's sunny inside of Earth. I'm being playful, guys. I have no idea how to interpret this Nostradamus quote. Anyways, Joseph Campbell says, we're so engaged in doing things to achieve purposes of outer value that we forget the inner value. The rapture that is associated with being alive is what it is all about. Yeah, it's the fascination of existing at all. It's like a person discovers, there's an outer space and it seems like an emptiness, everything's floating, and it's like the person, whoa, am I existing right now? Yeah. Robert Browning says, that's the wise thrush. He sings each song twice over, lest you should think he never could recapture the first fine, careless rapture. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the rapture of pursuing is the prize, the vanquished gain. The rapture of pursuing is the prize, the vanquished gain. So it's kind of like Henry Wadsworth Longfellow saying, the rapture of pursuing, so that intense emotion of pursuing something, is the prize, the vanquished gain. Oh, I think he's talking about it in a religious context. Anyways, I don't know. I'll keep going. I feel this episode has a different rhythm than the previous episodes, but Dave Morris. When a medium like games or comic books whips up such a rapture of enthusiasm, naturally we look for lessons we should be learning. Martin Seligman. The belief that we can rely on shortcuts to happiness, joy, rapture, comfort, and ecstasy rather than be entitled to these feelings by the exercise of personal strengths and virtues leads to legions of people who, in the middle of great wealth, are starving spiritually. There was a term here, ecstasy, and in the Sufi tradition, they had a sort of concept of divine ecstasy. And divine ecstasy was another way of saying when, through a sort of devotion to truth, the person experienced truth. You see, from the religious perspective, if we take a theological angle here, it's as if God, the soul is like the secret of God, but the soul is like the extension of God into man. So if the soul, which came from God, starts worshipping God, for example, and realizes, in some sense, it's as if like a mini truth inside a simulation that discovers a macro truth. Imagine a micro truth inside a simulation discovers a macro truth. In that, it's like a drop dissolving. Like a drop dissolving into the ocean, dissolving into the ocean is the same thing as rapture, where some eyes of truth that are looking out of, let's say, a changing simulated moment, they discover that truth. What I think, if I was to kind of clarify my view on rapture, is when your eyes remember truth. So actually the title is, it's a divine remembrance. Rapture is a silent observational entrance into divine remembrance. Exactly. Yeah. So I don't need to readjust my view actually. But let me see what else there is. Simon Sebag Montefiore. The Russian Revolution mobilized a popular passion across the world based on Marxism-Leninism, fueled by messianic zeal. It was perhaps after the three Abrahamic religions the greatest millenarian rapture of human history. Yeah, after the Abrahamic religion. This is actually an epic quote. Because I don't know if people know about Marxism and Leninism. It was such an intense movement that it was having an effect. It was like a psychological revolution where human beings were revaluing the human position. You know, people, may not respect philosophy that much nowadays. But philosophy was an attention to the model or the structures behind people's eyes. We all have will, but the will is like a force, and it's going through the shape of life, the human design. Like right now, it's very difficult for me to say, am I my body? Am I the energy within my body, or the energy that's being my body? Right? I could choose to look at reality right now as if I'm just the periodic table, hallucinating psychology. I could have the view that I am the mystical union of the individual dimensions of my life with the collective presence of it all, Anyways, onwards into the quote tunnel. Said Nursi, this guy's an epic. I might just go into his quotes. He says, the purest joy for the human spirit and the sheerest delight for man's heart are the rapture of the spirit contained within the love of God. So what I think, if I was to attempt to explain this, it's like The love of God means a moment where you cannot make a mistake, because God's greatest love, technically from a religious context, is forgiving man's sins. This is something people in religion don't realize, that it is wrong to make a sin, and sure, the sin may be so grave that the person may feel their judgment will come and they would go to hell, right? But the concept of God is this idea that if the person repents, connects to God, they don't go to hell, right? Like, that's the whole allure of I would say, like, the core religious structure, right? Like, what are all religions doing? Trying to establish a relationship of an individual human archetype with a cosmic administrator. So it's kind of like, imagine there's members, just like a Discord server, there's members, there's moderators, and there's the admin, right? So it's kind of like, imagine now the member knows the admin. So if that explains the love of God archetype here in the quote. And he says, the side notes, he says, the purest joy for the human spirit and the sheerest delight for man's heart are the rapture of the spirit contained within the love of God. The love, it's as if it's literally the realization of your true self in a true world. That is rapture. That is the divinity I think the psychological entity is seeking. It is seeking a salvation beyond the burden of a self. George Stevens, I was fascinated by all of it. The sounds of the theater and the audience, their rapture when a play took over and moved them and held them quietly. When the audience was truly moved, it was absolutely quiet. They were in a communion because they were learning the truth about themselves. You know what's interesting? Anything that's important, we actually become silent. I have a twin brother. When we were young, me and my brother would hang out a lot. Like, imagine 11, 12 years old age, and me and my twin brother, we would, my grandmother's house had this metal door, and there was this store that me and my twin brother, when we were young, we would go and we would buy these gums that, like, it was a piece of gum that had a sticker around it, right? Like, it had a sticker, like a sort of, surprise sticker inside the gum or something. I don't know. And one day we were coming back, my brother slips and his head hits the, this metal door, but it just hits a sharp part of it where there's no damage to the, it's like his head doesn't intensely hit the door, but there's like bleeding, right? And it was such an intense situation, and my grandmother, she was nearby the door. She just runs out, and there's something called vetadine. It's like it's like this disinfecting medical liquid, right? And she poured that on my brother's head, and pretty much afterwards my brother goes to the hospital, and everybody in the house is silent. And I remember it was as if something from this cheerful kind of having fun in the artificial vibe, suddenly something serious and important happened, and all that we could do, it was as if the personalities of everybody had shut down, right? And we were all in this sort of silent expectation, I think that story was a little, unnecessary details, but pretty much the idea was that there is something important happens, we are silenced by it, and something divine happens, right? If something so otherworldly happened right now, like right now I'm giving this talk, imagine like a bunch of, let's say, glowing extraterrestrials appeared on my balcony. I would, for a second, I would just pause, do you know what I'm saying? It would be a sort of silence, and then from that silence, an observation of how much the reality is going to be taken seriously, for example, right? So I'm saying if something otherworldly happens, we are silenced by it, right? And the concept of rapture, like in that picture, here's the picture. This picture I was showing the viewers. Look at the people's. Look at how the artist has drawn the people, right? It's as if all their eyes are closed. Everybody's eyes are closed, and it's as if they are somewhere else, in their inner realms. It's as if it's the taste of a greater dimension. I shouldn't say taste of a greater dimension. It's the taste of an original truth, or the sense, or the feeling that one is seeing something that is not doubtable. Rapture is like the observation of the observation of how divinity moves in the moment, how divinity is the movement of the moment. I'm going to go into a Said Nursi quote tunnel. This guy's quotes are on another level. He says, and he's a Turkish theologian. He passed away in 1960. Said Nursi says, the beauty of a finely worked object points to the beauty of the craftsmanship. The beauty of the craftsmanship points to the beauty of the name which was the source of the craftsmanship. The beauty of the name of the craftsman's art points to the beauty of the craftsman's attributes manifested in the art. Said Nursi says all true happiness, pure joy, sweet bounties, and unclouded pleasure are contained I read this one, within the knowledge and love of God. Said Nursi says the truth cannot be deceptive and one who sees it cannot be deceived. Said Nursi says nature is a divine art, it cannot be the artist. It is a dominical book and cannot be the scribe. It is an embroidery and cannot be the embroiderer. It is a register and cannot be the accountant. It is the law and cannot be the power. Said Nursi says the magnificent cosmos is a palace that has the sun and the moon as its lamps and the stars as its candles. Time is like a rope or ribbon hung within it, onto which the glorious Creator each year threads a new world. Said Nursi says a thing's innate disposition or God-given nature does not lie. Whatever this innate disposition says is the truth. Said Nursi says practice the brotherhood, love and cooperation insistently enjoined by hundreds of Quranic verses and traditions of the Prophet. Right, so this is in Turkey. It's a sort of connection to religion. Said Nursi says sin penetrates to the heart, darkens and hardens it until it extinguishes the light of belief. Each sin has a path that leads to unbelief. Unless that sin is swiftly obliterated by seeking God's forgiveness, it grows from a worm into a snake that gnaws at the heart. Yeah, I think what Said Nursi is saying is that if the person experiences a lot of inefficient moments, they might just identify it. Like, it's like, what kind of memories are we creating for ourselves, right? Like, whoever you are listening to me, think about all the moments in your life up to now where you have thought that, you know, there was some inefficiency or you were weak or incapable, and it's as if that was the type of self you chose to create as a memory, right? So the idea of the future is that at least a strategy for civilization 1.0 to change, rather than us just going straight to building civilization 2.0. This is another route. People have to start trying to have more memories of advancement. That means more advanced experiences will lead to a more advanced identity, and advanced identity will seek out the most advanced identity. The most advanced identity is the collective movement. You know, so it's as if it's another way of saying the most advanced version of a self is the most advanced world. Said Nursi says the signs, proofs, and evidences of divine unity are incalculable. Said Nursi says I can live without bread, but I can't live without freedom. Said Nursi says in spring the dead trees, roots, and animals come to life again exactly as they were, thus providing hundreds of thousands of examples, specimens, and proofs of the supreme resurrection. Said Nursi says the mirror to the beautiful is beautiful. Now, I consider, I've talked about this quote before in other episodes, and this quote is, I see it as a double-edged sentence. So, the mirror to the beautiful is beautiful. That means somebody beautiful looking in the mirror is going to be like, yo, the mirror is beautiful. beautiful because I'm beautiful. But it could also be that the mirror to the beautiful is beautiful. That means in some sense, the reflection to truth is true. Side Norsey says, time has shown that paradise is not cheap and neither is hell unnecessary. Okay, that's a bit intense. Side Norsey says, the raising to life of all animate beings at the resurrection of the dead can be no more difficult for divine power than restoring to life a fly in the spring, heavy with the death-stained sleep of winter. Side Norsey says, guys, this is I think this is a religious saint. I'm reading the quotes of a religious saint, but Side Norsey says, the all-wise maker attaches hundreds of instances of wisdom to each of the beings in the palace of the universe and equips them to perform hundreds of duties. To all trees he bestows instances of wisdom to the number of its fruits and gives duties to the number of its flowers. So technically, Side Norsey is saying every person is bestowed, I guess, a sort of infinite, universal access to perception. It's as if our minds, we think we're like we enter this world without any sort of past, but in some sense, it's like the body didn't have a past when it was born, when it came into existence. But the mind had a past. It's the strange idea that if the mind, through Descartes' mind-body dualism, like if the mind is in another dimension, it could be that our mind is not something that is born. Our body is something that is born and dies. The mind is something that is accessed, or is something that is remembered. That means when I wonder where all of these Mr. Within talks are before I speak, they are in the world. They're in my inner realms, which in some sense is inspired by the world. This view that we are a mind, I think in the future it might just go back to body and soul. Just a known self and an unknown self. And the way the known self interacts with the unknown self, there is a mind. We call that mindhood or the free will. The way the unknown has a response to the unknown, has a relationship with the known. The unknown self has a relationship with the known self. We call that divinity or divine will. In the future, everybody in knowledge will be divided. I could see this kind of being a huge philosophical advancement and a simplification of knowledge and just human identity, right? It's as if there's going to be knownists and unknownists. That means in the future, if they ask, what kind of philosopher are you? The person's going to be like, I'm an unknownist, right? And the person's like, what is that? And the person's like, I believe it's unknown before known. That means the unknown holds within it a potential for not just the transcendental, structure-based reverence. The unknown is one of the closest metaphors to God. The word God. That means I could see how human beings were born from the unknown and they would enter the unknown. And there was this idea, right, that a person, all things come from God and all returns to God. really what it is it's like a creature with the capability to accumulate information is projecting a model on reality to consider that model absolute, and realizing that technically our knowledge is too small to capture the cosmos. We are actually playing. The species is playing with knowledge. There's, to be honest, if there's any presence of unknown intelligence, right? That means imagine extraterrestrials land and like they can walk on water, or they can fly or something. It's as if like in that moment, like let's say an extraterrestrial lands and it can fly without wings, without anything, right? It just lifts up into there, and scientists are like, WTF, why isn't gravity working on this MF, Side Norsi says, be certain of this, that the highest aim of creation and its most important result are belief in God. The most exalted rank in humanity and its highest degree are the knowledge of God contained with belief in God. God makes sense. The narrative of God makes sense if the person is in a multidimensional reality, because if one is in a multidimensional reality, that means it's another way of saying there's ways they're existing where, because they're not conscious of, they don't know what to do. Why have human beings been drawn to the concept of God? Because deep down they realize it doesn't make sense. Existence doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense, right? Not because we don't have the knowledge or all that. It's not made just in the domain of the senses. That means if right now there is something beyond all human sensory perception, all our knowledge is based on our sensory perception, right? It would be as if extraterrestrials, would land on Earth in the future, like hypothetically, and we'd be like, yo, where have you guys been? And they're like, yo, we've been right, like beyond your, the electromagnetic spectrum you guys are so accustomed in seeing. Like it's as if beyond our eyes there could be worlds that are listening. This is something I've wondered, that I try to speak to the whole world when I give these talks, to the whole world, to the universal sector. But I don't know, sometimes I've had a feeling like once I gave a talk, and these talks started when I was in UK, Birmingham, for some time. And I remember one night I came to give the talks, and there was a spot I would go and sit, and there was a cat, like a cat out of nowhere had appeared, and this cat was literally standing like a meter away from where my chair was, where the bench was, right? And it was outdoors. And I remember I kept walking towards the bench, and I was expecting in my mind like this cat is going to run away, or usually when you go near a cat it maintains its distance from you. But I went and sat down on the bench, and that cat stood there. Like, I'll never forget it. The cat was, for a second I felt it was being frozen, like from another dimension. Sometimes I've looked at even dogs, cats, just other animals, and I've wondered okay, is there one conscious agent in their moment? The shift of personality usually suggests there's more than one conscious agent. Sometimes when I think what emotions are, it's kind of poetically it's like two minds trying to be present in the same body. I mean, that's an intense way of saying it. Maybe I'll say it this way, that what an emotion is behind our eyes. Behind our eyes, more moments. There's more worlds than in front of our eyes. That means a person gets emotional because something changes, and because something changes, they have a value system before the change, right? So it's as if you have to remember yesterday to have a feeling about today. And similarly, we have to appreciate the feelings we have today to, in some sense, enter the greatness of the future. Said Nursi says, do not suffer pain and torment without reason. Somebody all-powerful and all-compassionate owns everything. Rely on his power and do not accuse his compassion. Renounce grief and anxiety and accept relief. Be rid of your troubles and find serenity. I think this is the pointer towards the idea of religious ecstasy or spiritual ecstasy. Said Nursi says, when I was 10 years old, I had a great pride in myself, which sometimes even took the form of boasting and self-praise. Although I myself did not want to, I used to assume the air of someone undertaking some great work and mighty act of heroism. Said Nursi says, all at the resurrection there will be the return of spirits to their bodies and the revivification of the bodies and the remaking of the bodies. Said Nursi says, some sciences need mutual support and assistance to develop. The majority of these are physical sciences. Mutual support has almost no use in other disciplines, such as attainment of intuitive knowledge of God or spiritual progress. Said Nursi says, the Quran, throughout all of its verses, aims mainly to establish and confirm four basic universal truths: the existence and oneness of the maker of the universe, prophethood, bodily resurrection, and worship and justice. Said Nursi says, those who are greatly occupied in physical or material matters lack sufficient knowledge or have only superficial understanding of spiritual matters. Therefore, such people's opinions and judgments concerning spiritual matters carry no weight. Said Nursi says, the ever-renewed instances of beauty and fairness passing over the faces of the beings in the universe show that they are shadows of the manifestations of an eternal, beauteous oneness. Of an eternal, beauteous one. It's not oneness. Said Nursi says, if you can visualize the whole of spring and see paradise with the eye of belief, you may understand the utter majesty of everlasting beauty. If you respond to that beauty with the beauty of belief and worship, you will be a most beautiful creature. Said Nursi says, all true happiness, pure joy, sweet bounties, and untroubled pleasure lie in knowledge of God and love of God. They cannot exist without them. And what is God? The inconceivable source of reality. So in some sense, it's another way of saying a person finds true happiness, pure joy, sweet bounties, and untroubled pleasure when they know the inconceivable source of reality and they love the inconceivable. I mean, this is like a next level idea. Why? Because people love what they see. I have yet to see someone say, I love outer space, or I mean, not love outer. It's like, I love space where it matters. And no, it's like, if it doesn't have content, we don't know what to love, because we think love is an ideological relationship with reality, right? But in some sense, what experiential love is realizing that we cannot be alone when the world is alive. Said Nursi says, the life of the hereafter is the outcome of all this world. Said Nursi says, the origin of all revolutions and corruption and the spur and source of all base morals are just two sayings. The first saying, so long as I'm full, what is it to me if others die of hunger? The second saying, you suffer hardship so that I can live in ease. You work so that I can eat. Said Nursi says, the fact that there's a unity in everything demonstrates that they are works and artifacts of a single being. The universe is like a rosebud swathed in 1,000 veils of unity. Or it is a single macroanthropos dressed in unities to the number of divine names and universal divine works. To continue, Said Nursi says, in divine unity and the affirmation of it, divine beauty and dominical perfection become apparent. If there was no unity, that pre-eternal treasury would remain hidden. Said Nursi says, belief contains so many truths pertaining to God's names and the realities contained in the universe that the most perfect science, knowledge, and virtue is belief and knowledge of God originating in a belief based on argument and investigation. Said Nursi says, the beauty of man's being, fashioned as he is in the fairest of forms, demonstrates the existence of the Maker, while at the same time the fact that together with his comprehensive abilities lodged in that fairest of forms, he soon declines and dies, demonstrates the existence of the resurrection. Says the transparency of a metaphor displays the glint of truth, but if a metaphor is taken for a reality, it then becomes dense and makes the truth it is meant, and masks the truth it is meant to display. Said Nursi says the divine wisdom, which requires a division of labor, has sown different abilities and tendencies in human nature and has enabled human beings to carry out the duty of establishing sciences and developing technology. The fulfillment of this duty is obligatory upon humanity as a whole, though not on every individual. Said Nursi says belief is not restricted to a brief affirmation based on imitation. Rather, it has degrees and stages of development. It is like a seed growing into a fully grown fruit-bearing tree, like the sun's image in a mirror, or in a drop of water to its images on the sea surface and to the sun itself. Said Nursi says the giver of existence is eternally existent. There is no harm. Therefore, in the passing of beings, for the things that are loved continue to exist through the continuance of the one who gave them existence, the necessary existent. Anyways, guys, laptop's at 9%. Let me go back to the episode. Rapture is a silent observational entrance into divine remembrance. What is divine remembrance? Another word could be one's true nature, an original state of being. What is rapture and experience? And silent observation is like how we notice. It's like who the rapture is happening to is becoming the divine remembrance. And I guess I'll leave the viewers with this idea, with a question, that who are you when you experience rapture, or when you have experienced rapture? Is there a who there, or is it that the whole moment is allowed to be trusted completely? What is revelation? A moment of trust. Like human beings, the brain simulates so many realities, right? But what is it about the concept of revelation where it's as if one instance of reality is more important than other instances of reality because of what it does to the attention? The remembrance of the instant faith we already have in our unknown presence It's like when you realize you're an unknown being, the only way you can be is to trust the self. So it's another way of saying, those who trust the unknown poetically can witness God's handwriting in the moment, or the divine agencies a divine agency's handwriting in the moment. Something is moving the moment, dear viewers. And that's where the mystery of mysticism begins. Our eyes are open to see something, it's like we're alive to experience something. But what's the most profound thing that we can experience? The reality of the experiencer. We are like beings that are seeing a world, but we don't know if we are how would I say, if we are the observed or if we are the observer. Like right now, my physical body is real existentially, but the idea of me, it's like I can touch my hand, but I can't touch like the idea of me, But it's as if what is, or how is attention, or how attention is identifying with the moment. It's like the whole moment is watching what's within it, It's like not only are we within the world, but the world is within us, and we're aware. We are aware of how we're being in a world, and a world's being within us at the same time. That's the whole point of being being a personality to a biological body. It's as if the intention behind this plane of existence is not per se to understand reality, or I should say differently. I feel perhaps there could be this view that we are alive as a known temporary entity to discover an unknown eternity. We are here to realize that the source of movement within all phenomena is a singularity. It's as if all worlds are being present at once, but there's so many different worlds, but they're all being present at once. The presence of the world, or I should say this way, the unknown presence of the world, is where the known personality realizes there's more. Wonder about your eyes, and through silence enter the ultimate. For a lion may think it's a sheep, but it can never be. We are advanced beings, and there has never been a moment where we have not been that advanced, but the potential is there. The potential is like the eternal expectation of the moment. Be free, for the world is. Thanks for listening, guys. Much blessings, and namaste.